Good evening, everyone. Hi, guys. So right now we're starting our, Tech at Home series 2020. So right now I would like to invite, comment below in, YouTube and also in Facebook, your name, and also your profession, so that we can see everyone that's active right now in our live stream. So again, hi guys, I'm Harvey J.M. Season, your DSC lead and president for DSC Loyola. So we welcome everyone to Tech at Home Series 2020, and we are happy that we are already at our fourth week. Can you believe it? So if you're subscribing, our channel at www.facebook.com/DSC Loyola, we already have workshops on data science, one among which is with thinking machines. Also, we had Quick Labs workshop with Google Cloud, in the cloud. And right now, we have a mobile development workshop using Flutter. Um, yeah, so to give you a brief background what DSE is all about, DSE Loyola is a student organization in the Ateneo de Manila University, powered by Google developers that aims to build student skills and network by giving them access to different technologies, specifically Google technologies such as Android, Firebase, Angular, Flutter, Google Cloud, platform, and many more. Together, we learn in a peer-to-peer learning environment and build solutions for the community. So again, we would like to invite everyone by tagging, or by following our pages in Facebook, in Twitter, in Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can check www.dseadmu.org. And right now, let me introduce to you what Tech at Home series is all about. Tech at Home series is a student-led online technology seminar series that teaches new technologies, especially Google technologies, to a wide and diverse audience. It will be composed, of hands-on workshops and speaker engagement from esteemed professionals in the field of technology. The topics will range from data science, cloud engineering, web and mobile development, and other tech-related advocacies. These event this event, rather, was crafted in the light of the enhanced community quarantine and the desire of students and professionals to learn new skills during this pandemic. And right now, I don't know if it's just me. I know there's a typhoon, and it's kind of noisy outside. So everyone stay safe at home. Yeah, and let's learn together, Flutter. Before I introduce our speaker for tonight, I'm happy to see that there are lots of viewing our live stream currently. So thank you for that. Let me introduce our speaker. Joshua De Guzman is a software engineer with a passion for learning and teaching, based in the Philippines. He is the Google developer expert for Flutter and Dart. He's currently working at freelancer.com, world's largest freelancing and crowdsourcing marketplace by numbers of users and projects, where they connect over 43 million employers and freelancers globally. Previously, he worked at Corpa, sorry if I stated it wrong, the largest publicly listed consumer technology company in Southeast Asia, where he developed Android and iOS apps as part of the company's product line and worked with some of the country's well-known companies. Outside of work, he's contributing to open source projects, answering asking questions, in Stack Overflow, and sharing experiences and knowledge with the community. He founded Flutter Philippines, where it's a place that continuously grow and have much more appreciation in Flutter. Now, let us introduce I would say my brother and mentor in Flutter, Joshua De Guzman. Hi, bro. How are you doing? I think you doing good, bro? Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, my bad. Hmm. Wait, we're having technical difficulties with Josh. What? Okay, wait. Let me fix this in a second. Uh-huh.
Hi, Harvey.
Okay. I think, yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah.
Great.
Hi, bro.
Hello.
Wait lang,
How
I'm
are you
fixing
doing?
it. Oh, oh, shit. There. Yeah.
Great.
Hi, bro. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Uh, should I start now? How are you doing?
Yeah, you can start, bro. So right now, Joshua will take the floor for teaching us in um, Flutter. I think before we start, I just like to ask you a question. How did you start with Flutter? How did you get to know about Flutter and all?
I first knew Flutter way back in 2019, I guess, when one of my colleagues in our company actually shared what Flutter is. So his name is Daniel, and from then I started researching and yeah, digging up under the hood how Flutter is written, how can we build fast applications using Flutter, and yeah, I really get got involved in terms of giving back to the community by attending meetups, sharing talks on these meetups, and sometimes hosting a study jams and hackathons.
Okay. Thank you for that, bro. I think with that, it's also good time also, to start your presentation. So I'll give the floor to you.
Great, thanks, Harvey. Okay, so yeah, let's just open this up. Great. So first of all, I'd like to thank Harvey, for giving me an opportunity to give Flutter Talk in Tech at Home, and from the Flutter Philippines, we'd like to congratulate you for hosting such an amazing event. Woo. And yeah, I got the inspiration from my talk from our community, who came from different backgrounds, some from different tech stack, others from design, and especially those who don't have, programming experience at all. So yeah, in this talk, I promise, to help you get started using Flutter and build those awesome applications. Huh? Okay, we'll just move this one. Okay. So I guess Harvey already introduced me. So I'm a Flutter and Dart GDE based in the Philippines, a software engineer in freelancer.com, and I'm one of the volunteers at Flutter Philippines. Flutter Philippines is a non-profit collaborative community for those who are interested on building awesome applications using Flutter and Dart. Everyone is welcome to join, whether you're someone who's about to start write their first Flutter code, or someone who's already experienced uh, writing their Dart code. Then feel free to join us, and together let's create a very welcoming community for everyone. If you're interested, just visit flutter.ph. Great. So these are some of the events that we hosted from the past. We had a study jam at freelancer.com. We also had one at Recruit Day. We hosted also as well in Cebu, in Finmayupang, and our last in-person meetup was hosted at M Clinica in BGC Taguig. And currently, we are moving away from in-person meetups, and we are currently hosting webinars instead for us to be able to continue sharing how awesome it is to build apps using Flutter and Dart. And currently, as well, we are hosting this event at home.flutter.ph, where we encourage everyone to finish the App Brewery certification and join our webinars hosted on top of these courses. And if you're interested joining this event, just visit athome.flutter.ph. Great. So let's start with the actual talk. Hope you guys had the interest, joining our community after hearing what or seeing those study jams and previous events we hosted from the past. So way back in college, I had the chance to build some applications using Android that enabled me to work for projects, that contract-based and remote-based projects that are looking for developers who can code on this platform. So my expertise before joining the industry is primarily on Android, but from experience, I have learned that the good paying contract projects actually made for those who can code on the two platforms. At least in the context of mobile, we have these platforms, iOS and Android, where developers can either deploy their apps on Android phones or iPhone devices. However, again, there's a challenge that if you're not familiar with coding on these two platforms, it's really difficult to get the project or the contract you want to work on, because they are either looking for multiple developers on a single project, but oftentimes they are looking for solo developers who can do both. Well, so I was motivated actually to learn these two platforms where I can get more success rate in terms of submitting proposals to these remote projects. So I decided to learn these two platforms. However, on top of this, you have to bear in mind that you have to learn how the development setup works. The different toolings that you have to take into consideration, the different IDEs that you have to use for you to be able to work on even a simple application. So this is a challenge for me, and it's kind of intimidating from the very beginning. Next is, if you are working on two separate platforms, you have to learn at least two separate programming languages. And these programming languages, may vary from either using Java or Kotlin for Android, or using Objective-C or Swift for iOS devices. However, this is kind of intimidating if you're someone is just keen on trying to prototype projects. And by doing so, if you're trying to use these two native and separate platforms, it can be really troublesome, especially if you're just aligning things, fixing up some UI, and just working on the prototype projects. And yeah, you still need to work on two separate platforms, which is kind of redundant. Next is, working on two separate platforms requires you to store them on two separate repositories. Well, one scenario I've experienced is that I tried automating some unit tests for a specific project, for example, Android. And if you tried adding it on a single platform, then expect that you have to do it again on the counterpart platform. So you have to redo a lot of things, automations, the tooling, and yeah, the familiarity with the different development setup, the tools, and the plugins used for using these applications. Last but not the least, if you are a solo developer, who's working on high value projects, oftentimes from experience, these are time constrained. You only have a short, limited duration in terms of submitting the output for your project. So bear in mind that it's really kind of difficult, especially I can see how much fast you can get things done if you are working on two separate platforms. But in the end, you'll pretty much end up having the same UI and having the same layout for these applications. Now that you've learned the challenges, how can Flutter actually help us solve these challenges? Well, Flutter is a toolkit that allows you to build apps for Android and iOS using a single code base. With Flutter, you are enabled to build apps with improved developer productivity because it supports hot reload, in which you can iterate on your application and changes on real time. And yeah, Flutter is not just for mobile. Flutter is way more and beyond mobile. Flutter is built for you to be able to deploy your code using in the web and in the desktop, Linux, Windows, or Mac OS, pretty much by using the same code base with little to no platform-specific configuration. With Flutter, you are enabled to build apps with expressive UIs. The widgets or the classes that you need to add inside your application for you to be able to display, for example, the text, a box. Pretty much, it's very straightforward and English-like. They use English-like keywords for you to be able to add these widgets easily. So for example, this is how we can design, a Supreme logo. I'm not a fan of this one, but yeah, I find this very an easy example. So we have this center widget, which is very English-like and very straightforward, that it centers a widget or centers itself relative to the parent or to the constraint outside its, outside whatever the child parameter is. So in this example, we have, container widget. So this is the one that gives, uh, the, re- the size of the box for the center in which it's relative to the parent. So as you can see here, the box is centered to the parent. So it's very straightforward. You just need to use center widget. Next is the container, which is centered because it's passed on the parameter child. So expect that this container or box will be centered on the screen, and you can pass on some custom parameters such as the color, which is in this example colors that red. And next is you can also add padding. Last but not the least, if you want to display a text, inside a Flutter application, you can just simply use the text widget, which is again very straightforward, very English-like keyword, so it's very easy to learn and easy to remember when you are implementing or creating a new screen in Flutter. And I almost forgot to mention, we use this declarative UI approach in terms of building or painting the components inside our Flutter application. And the good thing about this approach is that you don't need to learn additional design language, unlike using Java and XML, Swift, Objective-C, and XML. Here, you just need to use Dart language, which uses Flutter framework for you to be able to display these widgets and components onto the screens of your applications. Next is Flutter supports fast development. Flutter supports hot reload, in which for every changes you introduce to the code, press save, then expect that these changes will be reflected immediately on the devices attached to your machines or your simulators and emulators. And this is kind of one of the best features of Flutter because from experience using a MacBook, 13-inch 2015, running my old programs in Android took me about 3 to 5 minutes, even if I try on changing a simple color, simple text in a screen. With Flutter, expect that these changes will be reflected under at least 1 second, so sub-second reloading. Next is Flutter offers a native experience. Flutter handles platform critical differences in which it may refer to the behaviors in terms of the gestures, the scrolling, and the transitions, meaning how your app switch between pages or screens in your application. Next is Flutter supports or uses Kia, which is a low-level C++ graphics library in which it allows your app to run at 60 FPS because uh, by by default, Flutter Skia paints your widget. So whatever you've added on your Dart code, it paints it directly on the GPU of your devices. So it's insanely fast for you to be able to even run a simple application in Flutter. Last but not the least is Flutter is open. Open in a sense that it's open source. You can inspect how the widgets, how the APIs are implemented, and how these widgets are working under the hood. So they are available at github/Flutter. And last but not the least, also, I've almost forgot, the community built around Flutter is very supportive and you have expect that the people around it is very respectful. And if you happen to join a community that is you feel unwelcome, just feel free to reach out to me or to my team at Flutter Philippines, and yeah, we'll help you out with your issue. Great. So now that you've learned Flutter, let's see where can we actually get started using Flutter and where can we take it, and also see what can we do within at least less than 20 minutes. What applications can we build within that duration? Our agenda, how you can get started with Flutter, the development tools and the plugins that you need to use Flutter. We'll be having some short Dart and Flutter tour where we'll be doing some exercises for you to be able to at least familiarize yourself how Dart is different from the other programming languages you've known from the past. We'll also try to build a chat application from scratch. Next is we'll try to see what are the applications we can do aside from deploying on mobile, and we'll try to run some CodePens and Dartpad on the web. Great. To get started with Flutter, just like to emphasize that everything in Flutter is a widget. Again, emphasize everything in the Flutter is a widget. Every text, every box, every colors, and every containers you see inside those screen are all widgets, whether they are on desktop, mobile, or web. Everything you see on the screen of the applications, if it's written in Flutter, are called widgets. And we'll try to see what Flutter widgets actually are. So if you try uh, heading on Joshua de Guzman slash or .net slash talks slash Flutter Everywhere, pretty much you'll see all the resources that we will be touching and we will be modifying within the duration of the talk. So I'll give you 5 seconds to visit this link and feel free to play around with the the resources included in that specific website. Five
Yeah, so
seconds.
for this, I commented, the link below in
Great.
our Facebook and as well as in our YouTube live. So https at joshua.guzman.net /doc/flutter dash everywhere. So again, those in Facebook right now as well as in YouTube, please join us in our workshop, hands-on workshop with Joshua de Guzman. Again, back to you, bro.
Great. Thanks. So assuming you're in the website already, you'll see most of the resources I've added to the slides. So if you've managed to finish this talk, I'll try to include the slides I've used as well for my presentation and include it in this website. So our first concern is, what widgets actually are. And as you can see here on exercise number 4, we have this thing called, I believe you guys already saw what a center widget is, and it's pretty much obvious in this scenario that it, it aligns this set of widgets. This container is a widget, this container is a widget, and another container is a widget. All of the things that you've added here, at least the ones that displayed UIs in the screen, are all widgets. So for example, I try on changing the background color of this box. So this is a widget. I'm trying to change the color to, say, purple, and try running it. Now that you've seen this widget actually changes its color, it's actually isolated. This property is isolated to this widget, which we modified a while ago. So again, everything you see in Flutter are represented or called as widgets. We'll see more into it later if we try to build our very own custom widgets, because if you try on building similar on what I have done here, which is a very simple app, you'll end up having nested widgets inside a single Flutter file. So let's get back. If you want to get started using Flutter, we'll not try to install the SDK now, because it will take forever if we try, guys, watch together with me, install the Flutter SDK. So yeah, just visit the link, flutter.dev/docs, get started, /install, and Flutter has a very well-written and well-documented, resources how you can get started or installing Flutter in your machines, whether you are on Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. These are just some of the commands that I find useful, even if you're someone who's starting using Flutter. I believe loving these commands will actually help you with your entire journey. So the first thing you have to take into consideration is learning what Flutter Doctor is. Next is Flutter Doctor is used for checking if your installation of the Flutter SDK actually is pass all the checks. So later we'll try to see how it works. Flutter Create, we use this as very straightforward, creating projects and running projects. You use Flutter.run with an optional verbose parameter or argument. And last but not the least, if you're doing Flutter project already, you'll probably need to learn what Flutter packages get is, because it's responsible for downloading the dependencies in your from the remote repository to your local machines. So even if you don't have internet connection, Flutter will still look for the cache libraries in your machine for you to be able to continue working, building apps using Flutter. So let's try to see and use this commands in action. So we have here, uh, we go into our desktop and let's try to use Flutter Doctor first. So as you can see here, it logs what version of Flutter I'm using. So in this scenario, I'm using 1.12.13 hotfix 6, and I also have my Android and Xcode tools installed on my machine. So please bear in mind that if you all have this check, you can pretty much start using or building code in Flutter. So next command that we want to be able to do is Flutter create space the project name that you want to name your project. So Flutter create. I want to name my project. Probably let's name it together as my chat app. Great. So I'm just zooming it for you guys to be able to see it. Right now it's running the Flutter command. Okay, well done. And it will generate it will generate a Flutter code, which this one we have to open it using Visual Studio Code. My chat app. Oh, it was open on another terminal. Great. So again, this is the very first project that is created upon running Flutter Create. So in our case, we will be trying to create an chat application from scratch. So this is the app that we will be using. But for the meantime, let's try to see what else is needed for us to be able to move forward building our apps in Flutter. Well, we have three options in terms of the code editors on where you want to work on for your Flutter apps. We have Visual Studio Editor. We also have Android Studio, and very specific, no, for iOS Xcode. My preference is, and my recommendation is for you to be able to just start building apps first using VS Code because it's lightweight and there's a ton of plugins created by developers and communities for Flutter. So
Actually, bro,
I'm sorry,
Joshua, I have a question. What's
sure.
the pros and cons with using Android Studio and Xcode? Um, and why VS Code besides the benefits that you have stated a while ago?
Great. So depending on your setup, personally, I haven't replaced my current machine, so it's very running Android Studio and Xcode on my machine is very slow. So I manage to only run them whenever I want to build applications or deploy my apps to the App Store because uh, if I try to use this during development, it will be pretty slow. So yes, again, depending on your preference and on your machine, but yeah, from my case, I haven't replaced my laptop yet, so I still go I opt in to use VS Code. Hope that answers your question. Hey Harvey,
Yeah, that's okay, bro.
great. So these are some of the extensions I recommend for you to be able to work productively using VS Code. So Bracket Colorizer, Awesome Snippets, and PubSpec Assist are community created packages which you can use for your Flutter apps. And this is a requirement, I guess, for you to be able to run the syntax check for Flutter in Dart. So this is community driven. And if I try on checking my code here, Bracket Colorizer, if you can see here, since pretty much you'll end up working on nested widgets, you need to have a way of, at least this bracket colorizer gives me an indicator. Where is the opening tag? Where is the closing tag of my code? So So for this one, scaffold, you just have to follow this line and pretty much teach you how or where your Flutter code ended. And yeah, pretty much that's it for the tooling. We'll start on the Flutter and Dart tour. This will be quick. No, I guess for other languages, you have this concept of uh, variables and print commands. So in Flutter, it's no different. Just have to run this exercise. We have different ways on how we can instantiate variables in Flutter. We have string. We also have the inferred variable type, in which on compile or runtime, this can be distinguished as a integer variable. So if we try on printing, age plus 5, this is evaluated as 0 during runtime, and if you try adding 5, then pretty much it will result to 5. So that's for the variables. It's very straightforward. We have string variables. This is the type. This is the variable name, and this is the value. As always, other programming languages enters the void main functions. So in this scenario or exercise, we always have to add, or call our very first methods inside the void main function. Next is we have the concept of functions. So again, we just have to create functions. Say hello, which is you. This is a custom function. You could just simply create say DSC. This is the function name. This is the return type. And if you try on printing something inside this, just add print DSC, and for you to be able to check if it is cold, just have to click on run. Right now there's no we don't have something in our console because we haven't called the method for the function. So right here I'm calling the function DSC. So it's almost similar on how you call functions on other programming languages like Java. So press run, then pretty much you'll end up having the same output as mine, which calls the print function inside this method call. Great. Now we're done with functions. Let's try to move on to classes. This is one of the most important concepts as well in OOP, because Dart is the language used for building Flutter applications, is an object-oriented programming, or suppose OOP. So that's why you have to take into consideration learning what and how to create classes inside your application. So again, in the concept of OOP, classes represent objects. So right here, we're representing a class of planet, which represents the planet in the solar system. And whenever we want to instantiate an instance of a planet, then you just have to name it whatever planet you want to create. So for example, in this scenario, I created an Earth planet. So just have to pass on the required constructor parameters. One is, the name of the planet. Next is how big it is in terms of the size in radius in kilometers. So instantiating this object is, similar on how you instantiate objects in Java, planet, Earth, and you have to call in the constructor method, pass on, the name of the planet and the size in radius. So if we try running it again, Earth's radius is 6,731 kilometers. So as you can see here, we have a print method, which uses is string interpolation for you to be able to combine variables and string constants inside a string, inside a print method. So single print method. Great. That's all for Dart. It's very basic, it's very straightforward. You don't have to learn the complex today. Just have to learn those few concepts. Great. So now we're in the context of Flutter. So again, Flutter requires you to call again the main function, which is the entry point of our application, which calls in a run app, which is a wrapper for for us to be able to run our applications on either the web or the mobile applications. Just have to create.
Joshua,
I'm sorry. Yep,
Where can you learn like the Dart language? Is there a certain site that people can can check it out
yep.
if they're interested?
I've added the link on top of the resources. So I guess it's part of this installation. So you can just pretty much see if you try open this Dart SDK. Pretty much this is the documentation. This is the
Okay, thanks, bro.
go-to. No worries. Okay, back to Flutter. We have this main function and no the run up method, which and wraps our my app widget, which is a stateless widget. So in the concept of Flutter, if you're not changing something during runtime, in this case, we don't see something like a variable that we saw earlier, like string planet, and there's nothing really changing during runtime. You just have to call in stateless widget, which is a very straightforward and English-like keyword again that tells you there's nothing gonna change inside this specific build method and uh, class my app. But again, we have this build method which is responsible for returning and painting the UI, whatever widget we added inside this method. So in this example, I've added material app. So material app, we get the app bar, the screen where we can display our widgets. So pretty much all of the time we'll be using material app, but on a case-to-case basis, you may want to create, you know, you may want to create some custom wrappers for your own. But yeah, at least for most projects, you just have to use material app so that you don't have to redo everything from scratch. Great. So for this example, we have this called home parameter in which it calls the very first screen shown inside our application. So this is the home widget, and that contains this code. Right? So it's very small because sobrang late lang ng ginagawa nating code. So if we try on removing this app bar and try running again the app, in which the app bar will be removed. So again, this app bar adds, part of the material design is, it shows, I think you're familiar with some applications that it shows a top action bar for your, for example, Facebook, Instagram. It's pretty much how you can add those inside an application, at least in the context of mobile. Last but not the least is we have this body as a parameter inside the scaffold widget, which is responsible for painting whatever inside or whatever widgets set of widgets we pass inside this parameter. So in the context of Flutter, you just have to familiarize yourself with the layout groups. So the most common ones, at least we use in Flutter, is the column. So column is responsible for uh, displaying your widgets vertically. If we try on changing this on its counterpart widget, which is the row, let's see what will be the output of this application. Great. So as you can see here, right now it's just showing some overflowed context boost, but please disregard that. But at least now that you've learned, we have these two widgets, which is responsible for aligning, those set of widgets horizontally or vertically inside Flutter app. So you have this, exercise number 5, which is, I believe I've already, answered it for you, but feel free to answer it. There's a hint there in which you can see what you need to do for you to be able to finish this exercise.
Bro,
Great.
for you, which widget is the most like the thing that you use all the time?
Uh,
Maybe your favorite widget, perhaps.
yeah, I think my favorite widget is, I think, column and row, because it's the most, I guess, the simplest way, if I put into context, simplest way on how you can draw in Flutter. That's at least for my preference. Yep,
Okay. Thanks, bro.
sure. Great. So we're on to our last Flutter app, in which we can start building our chat application after this. So this is a simple application that displays a list of events happening all over the world. And as you can see here, we have a list of events stored inside this my homepage, meaning this is the list of items printed or added inside this list view. So in mobile or other platforms front end development, we have this thing called list view. List view is responsible for painting your widgets, at least loading it dynamically, whatever data you've loaded into it. So for example, the data that we load in this example is coming from this list of strings, and we pass on this list of strings inside listView.builder, which pretty much requires you to give item count, and you just have to pass on how many items this variable has or list of variable has, which in case our method for passing the count is dot length. On other languages, it may be dot size, or yeah, pretty much same to dot length. Last but not the least, if is we try to pass on the item builder. Now, item builder, just think of it as if it's responsible for painting each item we added to the list. So for example, this is a single widget. As you can see here, I'm not cheating on you guys. I'm not adding multiple cards just to show this type of events, but instead I'm using a single widget, which is a card, and I'm using the item builder for me to iterate these items or list of events without cheating on you, or without cheating on the data that we have right now. So again, that's pretty much it. You just have to create a list view if you want to display a list of events. And last but not the least is, we'll end this with, at least for the Dart tour, we'll end this with an example. This is an example I have for you guys running a Flutter code inside web. Uh, and I'll just Flutter code inside web. And if you try on running it, it's very smooth. And pretty much you could just simply modify the code, whatever colors or UIs you want to be rendered in this UI. Great. Now that we're done with the Flutter Dart tour, still have at least 10 to 15 minutes to finish our chat application. So before we start, let's just try to take into consideration the technical details on what are the technical or frameworks, plugins that we're going to use in order for us to build the chat application. Well, for the front end, we'll be using Flutter, back end JavaScript, Node.js, and this is optional. I've actually created a hosted server right now, which I believe uh, you can share this with everyone. Harvey, yeah, great.
Yes, bro. Okay, I'll share
So
it to everyone.
so we can actually chat together. I can see your question here. So,
Yeah, so hi guys, I'll be commenting a link below in both Facebook and YouTube Live. So let's chat there, like how Josh and I chat. Okay, so here's the link:
great. So it
slash.
just started. I just started raining, so I tried closing the windows. And
Yeah,
yeah, the final product for this application is these two applications that you see here. So this one is running on simulator, meaning it's an iPhone device, and this one is running on my physical device, which is streamed via screen copy. And if I try on sending chat, and I chat. So if you try sending chat right now, you can actually send it because we're using the same server, which I hosted on Heroku.
okay, let me try that, bro.
Great. So you
Yes,
guys can
bro.
chat here. And pretty much I'll try to switch on my local server after we try starting or building the app from scratch. Woo. I mean, like chat. Okay, that's the application. It's very simple. I believe we can finish it within a short period of time. So yeah, let's try using the project we created a while ago. So this is for run. I'll try running the application now. No, I'll try running the application now. And no speed, no programming. Great. Right now, I'm currently running the command Flutter run. So this again, for you guys to remember, this is responsible for running the Flutter project on the devices we're using.
Bro, let me
Okay,
ask you,
sure.
for using Flutter Run, is there a minimum hardware requirement? Like, for your Flutter Run to run smoothly and fast?
Yeah,
Or if you
at least nowadays, the minimum requirement for building this application, at least in the context of mobile, especially if you're using Android Studio alongside VS Code, at least 8 gig of RAM should work fine. But for the processor, I don't think it's a bit of a concern. I think it's a memory that matters, and the hard drive. You should be able to use SSDs. Please go on,
okay.
taking this. Okay, great. Now our app is running, at least on uh it's not running, I guess, on I guess I forgot that my yeah, great. So my other device is using IP address, so I just try to run Flutter, run D, and Flutter devices for you to be able to see the devices attached to your computer. And yeah, great. So this is the initial applications that you see right now. Please wait for the Android application to run, but this is the application that you'll pretty much see when you are building your first application. So it has the counter app, so it's very boring. We'll try to change that in a bit. And the first thing we have to consider doing, we just have to use the plugin remove all comments. I use a plugin for this. Remove all comments and format. So all of the generated comments from creating a project is removed. Again, that's a plugin, remove all comments. And yeah, we could start on stripping out some non-essential parts of the app. We could just remove floating action bar. We could just simply, I could just simply do something like this, so you guys could actually see the changes in real time. Hello world. This is the very first programming. Pretty much whatever changes I've added to the code, it's reflected right away. So the first thing we have to consider doing is, uh, yeah, create our Flutter app. And again, our almost forgot to mention that our application is powered by Node.js and Socket.io. So in our server, it's WebSockets is a concept of bidirectional communication in which a client can send a message to the server, and a server can either redirect that message to another client or it can respond back to the client. So that's kind of the high level overview of what we are doing here. And in our context, we are using Node.js as our server and Flutter as our front end for the clients of our applications. And the practical applications of these can either be related to uh, either messaging, notifications, real-time newsfeed, and a lot more. But for this example, we will be using Socket.io, which is a WebSocket JavaScript framework that helps us, communicate our clients' Flutter apps to our server, which is JavaScript built on top of Node.js and Express.js. Great. So the first step is we skip the definition of WebSockets, but it's all right. First thing is we created the Flutter app. Next is install the necessary dependencies. So the dependencies, pretty much we'll be only concerned on uh, Flutter-related dependencies. So in here, I've actually used Adhara.socket.io, which a wrapper for the Socket.io framework. So in this example, or in this plugin, it's actually the only working, at least as of the moment. The other plugins is other are not maintained well. So yeah, if you want to look for plugins that are already built for you could just visit pub.dev, and yeah, installation, just have to copy the dependencies and go on to your pubspec.yaml file, save. And in my case, since I have the extension for running, the getting the packages automatically, I do not I do not need to run, Flutter packages get, which if you don't have the plugin, you just type into your terminal Flutter packages get. Great. Next thing we have to consider is, uh, following following the requirements that these dependency requires us to do. So in this example, as far as I remember, it requires you to change your programming language in Xcode to Swift, which in my case, right now, if you're using the latest Flutter SDK, it defaults to Swift and Kotlin. And for the Android, you just have to add this specific line. So I just have to copy it inside our manifest file. So for those of you who is not familiar with what manifest files are, these is the where you it is a file that defines your Android application, the name, the package, and pretty much other activities that you have to include inside your application. Great, I've added it here. If you haven't seen it, it's here. I've pasted uses clear traffic. Great, hit save. And the next thing we have to consider doing is it's not running on. Okay, just have to switch on. Right now, we're just building on iOS for the simplicity of this demo. And next thing we have to consider doing is we have to start building the layout. Now, building the layout, we'll start with the send button, the chat input, and a container for the messages. So we'll start on main.dart. So this is the very first file called if you're trying to run a Flutter application. And we'll just try to remove or change the text to probably neighborly chat, neighborly chat, and just have to run it again because I canceled it. Next thing we have to consider adding is, we can't have a chat application without a send button. So let's try drawing our send button. Oh, okay. I almost forgot you have to run pod install first. And we have to configure maritime technical error. Great. So by default, yung pod, if you're not aware, this is the dependency management tool included out of the box in your Flutter apps to run Flutter applications on iOS. So if you try on changing yung may error daw tayo, pod file, I'll just try to uncomment this one since default target is 8, which is deprecated now for most of the plugins that we use. Just have to uncomment yung 9 and try to run again from root. Okay. It should reflect the changes, yung nilagay nating neighborly chat.
So bro, yung pod install na error is only for iOS simulation.
Yep.
Okay.
So for example, my error specific dun sa native part na tina-target mo, you have to fix it outside Flutter. But oftentimes, if you're using the latest SDK, which in my case, hindi updated yung pod ko, it turns out na outdated yung ma-generate ng pod file.
Oh, so usually the error if your SDK is not updated. So it's recommended that every time there's a new SDK update, you update or not necessarily.
Depending on your case, especially if there is a severe breaking change, but oftentimes if stable naman, hindi naman ganun kalaki yung breaking change natin sa stable channel. Yep, so yeah, let's start with adding, floating action button. And just try to wrap this scaffold with safe area. So as you can see here, lumalabas yung app bar natin. So let's just try to wrap it using safe area widget. And pretty much umusog yung app bar natin. So that's okay. And the next thing we need to do is adding container as center part of our screen. Run it again. And you can see how fast you can actually reflect the changes here. So we'll be adding stack. So stack, unlike column, a stack is responsible for painting, widgets on top of each other in the Z index. So for example, I try on building a container here, which is pretty much has a height of 500 and color, uh, probably colors got red. And we have another container which will contain, yung uh, input natin for the message. So the height is probably 48. Child is text muna. Yes. Hope you guys are following. And colors, lalagyan ko lang ng colors for you to be able to see it, at least. So with stack, unlike column, naka-inflate siya or naka-arrange siya vertically with respect to the size and the Z index. Right here, nagpapatong-patong yung widgets natin if we try on using a stack widget. So here, yung blue widget natin nandito, and yung red widget is nasa likod, which is something that we need for our chat application. And to simplify this one, we just have to use align widget, alignment, top center, para laging nasa taas yung widget natin for the messages list. And yung container, since we want to align it at the bottom, just had to add alignment dot bottom center. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Using the widget of Flutter is very straightforward and English-like. So yun, nasa bottom center siya, which is, whatever you've added sa alignment. And we tried adding the width. Right now, double infinity, which is not recommended, but at least it works for now, since I will be giving you a modified and very clean code base naman after this. Great. So the next thing we have to consider doing based on sa steps natin is to add a send button, chat input, in yung containers ng messages. Tapos na tayo dito sa containers ng messages. Ngayon, gagawin na lang natin is to add yung send button. So my idea here is to use, I'll just probably use yung, probably show a row widget. So gagamitin natin yung row widget because we want to probably show the widgets side by side. One is the input for the text and one for the send button. So I guess you guys are familiar how messaging or messenger WhatsApp is laid out. So row because gusto natin horizontally stack arrange sila. And try adding on text, which is hello, and floating action button, which is requires an on press. As you can see here, meron tayong floating action button. We just have to remove yung color. Palitan na lang natin ng yellow. Yan. Para lang ma-emphasize natin yung layout na in-edit. And there's also a settings dun sa, sa row in which allows you to update yung alignment of whatever widgets is added inside it. So for example, this one we just have to add on probably stretch or center. And the next thing is we have to convert this to edit text. Just have to, or text field. Sorry, Android. Text field. Just have to add container width, double that infinity, meaning extend the height width infinitely. Child text field, and just have to pass on decoration, input decoration, collapse, text, probably send a message. And we want to add on some, you know, tried running it muna. So ngayon, di pa siya nag-i-inflate since walang height. But if we have height 48, and we try running yung container again. Thanks. So ngayon, I'm just using container, to adjust the size of the widgets that I'm adding sa layout. So here, hindi siya nagpapakita. So medyo nakakatakot yan. And if we try on, yeah, probably I'll just update this to 100, 200. Great. Whew. Kinabahan tayo dun. And yeah, we try on changing. Huwag na nating pakialaman yung UI, but at least you get the point that those are the components used. And child, pwede tayo maglagay ng icon. Icons dot probably send. Yan. So ganyan yung way natin para mag-add ng icon sa chat. Yun. Ganda. Yes, we're done with at least building the layout. Next thing we have to do is mostly I'll just copy paste the setup, but I'll go through it one by one. So here, just have to create inside the init function. So to get yourself familiarized with the code. I guess it's not great. So this init state is the very first method called whenever you try on running this widget, and this is called after calling init state. So definitely init state is where you initialize probably all the connections that you have, the API calls, the things that you really want to happen before loading the UI. That's the purpose of init state. And we'll just try to create a function setup, which is an async function. And the async functions contain, the initialization of all socket IO related. Yan. Right now, gagawin lang natin is to declare variables for these. I'll just try to declare variable for this one and list of messages as well. Okay, so for you to be able to import, since as you remember, meron tayong import na plugin, just have to enter control dot, and it should be imported. We also have, I almost forgot to add UUID plugin, but yeah, it should work fine for now. Add na lang natin UUID pubdev. Great. Forgot to add this library. So this one, later na lang. Ready ko lang siya. Great. So for this one, comment lang muna natin sa mga wala pang model. And this is the initialization. Ito na yun. Like, you have to open a connection to Socket IO Manager. And right here, kaya kong mag-switch from either connecting locally dun sa server na naka-host dito sa machine ko, or since gusto ko mabasa yung messages nyo while doing this, I'll just connect dun sa server natin, which is hosted sa Heroku. And yeah, pretty much everything is explained sa documentation ito. And we're not trying to deep dive naman sa sockets.io. We're trying to use socket.io to create an app. So yeah, I think the documentation itself will be sufficient for your needs to understand what is happening under the hood inside this plugin. But on a high level, we're just opening a connection dun sa server natin for us to be able to register yung client, and we could either receive or send messages dun sa server natin. So we have on receive, which sa server natin meron tayong on receive yung receive tag. So for example, every time na may nagsasend ng message dun sa socket.on callback, ito try niyang mag-emit ng message dun sa clients. So for example, I call this send message sa isang client natin from the Flutter app or dun sa ginagamit yung HTML app. So this one. And dito sa ginagamit nyo, pretty much it will call on yung send message, and this callback will try to call the function emit, which is responsible for broadcasting sa clients whatever message is received from this event. So this is an event handler, and yeah, we'll try to add the model for the message. Let's go back to lib folder model.dart message. I'll just copy yung hindi lumalabas. I'll just copy yung model natin. Yan. So, yung message natin will contain a JSON payload in which it will be either serialized and deserialized along the way while passing between the server and the client side. So here we just have a property UUID and a message. A while ago you seen in the planets, similar on how you declare a planet object, meron lang tayong variables and constructors. However, mayroon tayong special functions here in which we could manually serialize and deserialize JSON payloads for for the stream of data we are receiving. So here we just have to uncomment the list of messages. So itong list of messages will contain, whatever messages is received within the client lang. So in a practical or in a real world, you may want to store these messages server side and hindi sa client side. Because the downside of storing messages sa client side is whenever you try exiting the app, you will not be able to retrieve the messages previously sent to you or broadcasted from the server. So here on comment ko lang, we are calling whatever received messages. So yung received messages natin dito, as you can see here, I'll try to zoom it. So yung received messages natin dito is directly connected doon sa dito. Doon sa ano siya. So very case sensitive. Meaning dito sa channel na to, dito tayo nagtatry mag broadcast. So if mali yung nalagay mo dito, for example, receive messages, then don't expect na may makuha kang message from your crush or from your enemy. And we'll just try to import this schedule binding later on. Great. So now that we've set up at least for most part of the app, into socket.io and how they are connected, let's just try to instantiate inside init state. So init state, doon natin tatawagin lahat ng setup methods. So wala pa yung UUID natin. Later natin i-uncomment yan. So you can see here we have list of messages initialized as array lists. Text editing controller, which is responsible for getting the input from the user sa text box natin. And scroll controller, which will be discussed at a later time. And yeah, I think we're mostly done. Just have to add yung function for sending messages sa client side. So sending messages, add lang natin tong logic na to sa great. Floating, yan. Yung on-press callback natin, meaning every time you you try to add or tap the button, it will call the callback on press, So right now, i-uncomment muna natin tong I guess UUID. Yeah. Great, we're done. Nothing has changed sa UI since mostly we touch on the socket connection, what event channels are, and how case sensitive they are if you're the one who's actually trying to build the app. Whew, lapit na. Tatlo na lang. Great. So next thing we have to consider doing is creating an item view. So syempre hindi naman ma-fill in ito ng list of messages if we don't have an item view. So right here, we just try to add on isang message lang. Messages that add, mag-add lang ako ng fake message. Hello. positional UUID message. Great. So, dito magkakaroon ng isang message lang yung list view of messages natin kahit wala pa tayong nare-receive from the server. So, if we try on loading yung list of messages, as you've seen earlier, I believe nakita nyo naman yung list view natin. We'll just try to use the same concept. I'll just copy this one, and lists of messages will be replaced here. And comment lang natin. Update natin yung height, which temporary. A null method was added. So let's just try to return text muna. Hello item. And just try to rerun your app. Nag-hot restart tayo right now because we initialize something sa init state. So it's very important that, whenever something is uninitialized at top level, you have to rerun your app again. So again, may error. Yeah, it's very scary. Yung scroll controller yan. Yeah, we haven't initialized yung scroll controller. And again, it's not working. Let's just try to see if it's working kapag hot restart. And right now it's not working. Let's just try to see, what actually is happening. Okay, may null siya. Nag-null siya sa 0.75. Okay, itong height. So pretty much we'll just fix it as 700. Whew. It works. But we'll just try to update it 600. Sirain na natin yung UI. Okay. I guess may bounded height siya. Oh, great. Ito yung 48. I guess this was added dun sa... Oh, mali yung pinaglagyan natin. Things happened. Mali yung pinaglagyan natin. We should add this one sa loob ng colors.red. Great. So, yan. Medyo nagkakaroon na tayo ng sort of technical difficulty. But yeah, we'll try to overcome it naman together. And we'll just try to replace yung sa container back again sa input. Just declare text controller. Pretty much run it again. And may error. May error. Okay, what's the error now? What's the error? Expected identifier. Things happen. No, nagkaka-error tayo minsan. But I'm not seeing 135, line 135. Child's. Okay. Whew. It works, no? So if we try on adding more messages, hello to, this should be added as well. Oh, great. So next thing we have to consider doing is, pointing yung messages sa natin, sa variables for us to make it a little bit more dynamic. So messages, then you may want to display, meron tayong object mode, meron tayong list of messages sa taas, as you can remember. Messages dot. Ano ba yung gusto natin i-display sa text? Then definitely yung message. Okay, we still have 10 minutes. And yon, so since we have two variables na added sa this natin, then yun yung i-display niya. And if you guys can actually chat with me right now, let's try if naka-connect tayo sa server. Ow. This. Oh, this one. S2. Right. So it actually works, no? So for example, hi DSC. Yun. So whatever message, no, yung isa-send nyo dito sa server natin sa web, I'll see it. So if you want some shout out, mag-send lang kayo ng message doon. And syempre, no? Nandayo. Right. So right now we are receiving messages. Guys, please send messages so we could actually prove that we are receiving messages outside, from my uh, keyboard. And try adding it here. 600, 500, 500. Right now, hindi naglo-load yung text field natin. I could just try to show yun. Right. Last thing we have to do is mag-send tayo ng message. No? Mag-send tayo ng message. So itong animation, meron tayong comment ko muna to. Send muna tayo ng message. Okay, let's try to send some message. Oops. Great. So right now we're about to try if this actually works, no? So let's say random, or let's say test UUID. So ginamit lang natin yung UUID at least for your information. Kanina may nakita kayong sent tapos receive layout ng item view. Pretty much you'll use it as an identifier whether you're someone who's sending the message or someone who's receiving the message. Yun. So it's working na, no? Nice. Yes. Right? We actually built it. So here meron tayo sa library natin na ginamit sa Flutter. Send message. So ang nangyayari dito is yung server naman natin ang nakasubscribe dun sa send message na event. So whenever your server is, subscribed dun sa send message, may callback function siya, which I guess you are all familiar na ang callback function niya is to emit or broadcast the messages sa server. So here it's actually working. And the last thing we have to consider doing is probably styling it, but yeah, I leave that as a challenge for you guys. And I'll just open up yung final project for run. Just open this one. Joshua G. I'll just open up again yung app a while ago. Yan, naka-open naman na siya for Android. And again, there's things that you can improve definitely. For example, fixing scrolling issue. For example, if you want to send on messages, dapat automatically mag-refresh yung screen natin, which is already given sa code. And last but not the least is I do have some recommendations. You can either create a chat application that has, probably as the user to enter their names, or probably add authentication. So probably you can have a private chat with your peers, add channels, conversations. And yeah, probably if you are the type of guy that wants to do everything from the very beginning, add the security on top of your application. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Here we'll just try to see where we take Flutter with us. So Flutter beyond mobile, you can deploy these applications pretty much on the web and desktop by running Flutter -d and Chrome. But for the simplicity of these demo, I'll just try to run or showcase with you guys yung CodePen. So CodePen, if some of you guys are familiar, this is a social networking for designers and developers who want to showcase some snippets of their designs written on different platforms, which was recently supported, yung Flutter sa platform na ito. So as you can see here, we have a bunch of applications you can try on the web, and you can just click on View Editor. And yeah, pretty much this is the web running. And you could just try running, click on this one. It runs smoothly. You could just change your code on demand. And other than that, you can deploy as well on desktop, which is currently on technical preview. And I do not advise, shipping your production apps yet, but you can feel free to try it. And yeah, I leave those recommendations and assignments for you guys to actually explore more on building your own messaging app. And yeah, summary, Flutter is a toolkit that can help you build apps for both Android or iOS, at least on the stable version. But you can also build apps for web and desktop. Flutter supports hot reload, which is a good or beneficial for improving developer productivity. Dart is the programming language used for building Flutter apps. And there are two types of widgets, stateless, stateful widgets. Official resources, flutter.dev/dart.dev, and some helpful links that can help you get started after this talk. That's pretty much it for me. So I guess we could actually use yung ano no, actually use yung chat. So if you guys have any question, no, you could actually uh, ask it dito siguro or kayo. Ikaw bahala kung
Yeah,
may Q&A.
so thank you guys, for participating in our humble live stream, hands-on workshop with Joshua de Guzman here. Hi, bro. Thank you very much, for being part of our humble series. Yeah, so I hope na you'd learn, something new with Flutter. Yeah, I think we have 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, to answer some questions. Yeah,
Sure.
so let's just wait if the audience has questions for us. I think one of the new questions. Oh, there's one question here in from our YouTube live. Describe stateless widgets and stateful widgets, bro.
I'm sorry. Describe
Um,
widgets.
yeah, the stateless widget and the stateful widget that you were talking about. Like there are two types of widgets. In widgets, right? The extension one. How can you describe it to us, and what scenarios do we use it for?
Great. If I have to explain it in a single sentence, stateful widgets is a widget that holds data that can change during runtime. So meaning whenever you want to deal with something that is changing whenever your app is running to the user, then you need to use stateful widget. Otherwise, if it's just displaying text, displaying an image without doing anything on its own, then pretty much you could just simply use stateless widget. And there's an abuse in terms of using stateful widget, so please bear in mind that whenever you try to call in set state, the build method is always called inside a stateful widget. So you have to be careful with that. And the rule of thumb is to get as less as stateful widget as possible. And if it's possible to use, stateless widget, go for stateless widget. And the good thing about here is we have this plugin called provider, in which it's sort of a dependency injection and a state management, in which you can create, sort of stateful widgets, but actually they are stateless widgets. So that kind of saves you a lot of performance in terms of, in comparison with using stateful widget. So again, what happens in this plugin is that it allows you to change or broadcast changes internally within the help of inherited widgets. But yeah, that's again up for next discussion, I guess, or webinar.
Yeah, thank you for that, bro, and thank you for the wonderful question that was provided to us. So, would you say, bro, that if you have data connected in Firestore, for example, you would use stateful widget since the dynamic changing of data, and
Mm-hmm.
for simple widgets, you can just use stateless if they're not changing. So that's the summary of it.
Yep, pretty much. You get
Okay.
it.
Joshua, you have another question from Kendra Go. She asked, "What made you decide to specialize in mobile development, which is, your primary specialty, and how did you start learning about it?"
Great. So I had the opportunity to start working on mobile way back in college. So I can say that getting exposed early on these types of software development is really beneficial. So probably I really started way back in college working on mobile, and joining the industry, I've discovered a lot more technologies such as Node.js, Express.js, and I kind of dive into working on backend technologies and web development because I believe learning these platforms might be beneficial in terms of dealing with probably an articulation why you are choosing or not choosing a specific technology, because this is very important, topic if you're working for a company, and if you can articulate or defend something, especially a technology that you want to use, then you'll end up not getting, your request approved. So yes, best if you could actually have the passion to start learning these on your own or take some courses so that you can actually have the passion to start learning these on your own.
Hello? Hi guys. So I think Joshua has a problem in his internet connection. But as he would say, you should delve into different kinds of resources. You can go online and as much as possible try some online courses. Yeah. So thank you very much, Kendra, for that question. Let me check if Joshua can go back to our live stream before we end. If not, I can end this live stream already. Yeah, I think Josh is still loading. Let's wait for him. Yeah, so thank you, Sil and Kendra, for those wonderful questions. Hi, bro. You back?
Hey, Harvey. Yeah, I got disconnected. Nag-brownout sa amin. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much, yeah, if you guys don't have any questions, that ends my talk. So, yeah, nag-brownout, namatay lahat.
Okay, so we'll be ending the talk
Yeah,
here.
I'm
Feel
joining by
free to
my phone
comment
right now,
down.
but I guess the electricity is back. Sure, if my question, pa, I can take probably two or three, I guess.
Wala naman na ata, bro. So we'll be ending the talk here.
Great.
Okay, bye guys.
Funny thing.
So that again ends our talk. Stay safe during this typhoon here in the Philippines, and God bless you all. Thank you for joining us.